Good evening. It's Tuesday, December 17th, 2024. I'd like to call this regular meeting of the Board of Finance to order. First item on the agenda, as always, is public comment. Given that we have no guests in the room here today, I'll assume there's no public comment. The first item on the agenda is one, to discuss and take action on a request to transfer $85,278 to full-time and part-time salary accounts.
This is a routine transfer to fund mid-year approval of salary increases. First one is for the town hall union. The union contract was approved the end of September by the RTM. And the second is an increase in the registrar of voters salary, and that was approved by the Board of Selectmen in November. So of the 85,000, approximately 9,000 is for the registrars and about 76,000 is for the town hall contract. Once this is done, we'll have $51,000 left in salary contingency, which is more than enough to cover the remaining outstanding dispatch contract that's not yet settled, which only has 9 employees, 3 of which are vacant.
And then the reason this is coming from two funds is because we can use money in the parking fund only for the employees that manage.
Right, there's a town hall employee who has 75% of their salary in the parking fund.
That next page afterwards, can you explain what we're looking at? Because I got a little bit confused by that.
So these are all the lines that we're transferring to. Down the left-hand side is the department. So because it's the town hall union, it's spread through a lot of departments because that's really a clerical union. Mostly moving to full-time. The one that shows it going to part-time is for the 2 registrars of voters because they only work part-time. And then going across just the current budget in each account, what was expended, what's available. The real key one, because these are just the general fund, is second from the right, the transfer amount totals $83,937 for the general fund. And the big moves are for development planning and management, which is P&Z, the building department, and police administration.
I see, okay. Got it. Thank you.
Any questions? Okay, I'll accept a motion to transfer $85,278 as shown in the memo. Jenny moves. Rob seconds. All those in favor? Unanimous. Okay, next is discuss an update on Board of Finance committee assignments.
I do have a handout on that. We don't have very many committee assignments. I think we have maybe 5. But this is what I have listed right now, and I think some of these have been on for a while. Some are fairly new. And if there's anything that I haven't thought of, because maybe it's just been idle, but we still have it as a committee, let me know.
I think we should put Rob on the 2 that he's not on.
He should be on everything.
Good Lord.
Let's just make it a clean sweep.
So the only other 3 that I saw might be coming up were, to the extent something moves forward on Weed Beach. If there's a project down there, I think that was kind of circa $2 million, right?
Yep.
So I think normally the role has been over $1 million. The Board of Selectmen is proposing to create a building committee. So that committee, and then Pear Tree Point,
That's another
that
potential
parking
one.
lot, beach, and boat ramp, we're going to be one that's 6 to 8 to 10. And then the only other one coming up is like later this fall, we have the teachers. The Darien Educators Association contract comes up, and that'll start kind of later this year. Usually, I think September, October. I'm not sure are there any other major.
We do also anticipate that the police union, no, I take that back. They'll be in about a year and a half that we'll start negotiations with them.
And what about speaking, Mr. Cardone was also on the technology. Is that still active or
No,
have?
that's been ended.
It went about a little less than 6 months.
Okay.
I think it served its purpose. It had subcommittees, about 3 or 4 off the top of my head, and it just had some ideas. They kind of ran with them all, and then it disbanded, I guess I'll
Yeah.
use that word. So yeah, I was on that also. But done, that's finished.
I'd have interest in Pear Tree if and when that pops up.
Okay. And Jenny, I thought you might have interest in Weed Beach,
I can do that.
if that moves
Sure.
forward. So
Sure.
I'm not sure what the cadence is going to be for the Board of Selectmen on that, but I know it's something to collecting more information on. And, you know, I'd like to do the DEA again. I mean, it's a fairly complicated contract. Last year, I think Dan actually joined with me, so we could, you know, you could either be a second, Dan, or we could bring someone else in as a second to make sure there's always 2 sets of eyes on that. And Paul, I take it, do you want to continue to be on the pension committee?
Fine.
And the police contract, you said it's probably 18 months out.
Yeah, because they expire June of '26. I don't think we have anything expiring in June of '25.
Okay. Well, in connection, I'll say this, with the budget coming up, I think there are going to be a few, sort of not like official committees, but I think a few work streams coming out of this committee, which I think we can think about how we're going to staff those to add a little bit of that workload. You know, Jenny, if you have availability, and, you know, Rob obviously has a lot of free time. And Taylor, I think I have a few ideas of some things we need to do, so I think there are ways to kind of get others involved in other things just off of the regular board activity. So Jen, do we need to renew any of these? Or I think the way it works is you're on until,
Yep, they don't have an expiring term. They're not for a set time limit, so I think they stay until somebody either elects to come off or resigns from the board.
okay. As it does relate to the budget, as, you know, Jen, I think maybe at our next meeting, we'll begin to think about, it's going to be in January, right?
Yep.
Is that the 11th or
Don't recall.
the 12th? Okay. But at that meeting, which I actually won't be here, but ahead of that meeting, I'll work with you all to try to put together,
The 11th is a Saturday, right?
so it must be the 13th.
So I would suggest that whoever is responsible for the school budget be identified well in advance of that, since Super Saturday will precede that meeting.
Yeah. Well, I think like last time, I think we had 3 primary on the school, but I think it's important that all of us are focused on that, just because it's 75% of our budget. So what I will do is over the holiday here, pull together what we did last year, send that around, and maybe I'll talk to you and Malin about which areas you guys may have interest in, and let's try to get that locked down, you know, in the week between Christmas and New Year's. And as Dan pointed out, just the Board of Ed is going to kick things off on Thursday, January 2nd, presenting the budget. The books are all going to be kept at the Board of Ed offices. I had books printed for all of you guys, and so I will you can either pick them up that Thursday, or I usually drop them off at your houses, or have the free labor called my kids drop them off at your houses. So.
Delivery.
And then Super Saturday, obviously on the 4th. Okay.
While we're on budget, it came up kind of came up at Board of Selectmen last night. If we were to put together a capital projects tour, is that something you guys would be interested in? Park facilities, DPW facilities, whatever we might have on the list.
In theory, yes.
Yeah.
Outside of obviously everything we did for schools
Yeah.
2 weeks ago,
Yeah.
right?
Yep.
Are you thinking something like we did for
The fire
You
department.
think- Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm thinking along those
Fire
lines so that
department.
you can see things firsthand. It seems like
I
it's
think it's a
probably
really good
helpful.
idea.
I think, did Parks and
Yeah.
Rec do one last year?
I
They
think a
do-
couple people went out with Park and Rec, but I don't think it was really a set full board thing.
Yeah, I would find it helpful.
Okay, we'll see about scheduling something like that for you, Board of Selectmen, and RTM all at the same time.
And do you think they do, find out if that's something they do all on one day, or whether they do Parks and Rec one day and maybe do Public Works?
I think, yeah, I think it's gonna depend on what projects we have, where they are. If they're all close together, and there aren't that many of them, we can do them on one day, but if it makes sense, because they're all over the place, we can split it up.
Yeah, I think it'd be better to do one day, though, to
Yeah.
just try to get everybody.
I also, mentioning Parks and Rec, I reached out to the chair of Parks and Rec and asked her to include our email address on all of their communication that goes out. They are taking a look at their initial draft of their budget, I think tomorrow
Tonight.
night. Tonight? Tonight, so. Okay. Light agenda, next is the financial report.
I have a couple of updates on revenue. When I ran this, we only had numbers through October for property taxes, investment income, other taxes, and building permits. So those are a little better than what you see here. Property taxes are up to just under 85.9 million. So about a $1 million increase there. Investment income is at 1,790,000 through November. Other taxes at 311,000 and building permits at 480,000. On all of those, we're doing really well. On investment income, which is one of our bigger numbers, we expect that we will make budget. November was a good month with maturities, so we took in about 400,000 of interest that month.
Hey, Jen, can I ask you on property taxes? You know, we set it at like 99, just under 99.5% collection rate. But, you know, some of the movement is changes in the grand list, and some of it is in, you know, the collection being above 99.5. Do you have, or can we track the actual changes in the grand list? Just because in terms of going through our budget, the initial budget guidance, one of the inputs is always the movement of the grand list, and
So in our budget file, we have a tab that has historical tax information, and part of that is all of the mid-year, certificates of correction, adjustments, tax appeals, that finally settle, those kinds of things. So any mid-year changes after the grand list is set, we have that historically. Another piece to this is supplemental motor vehicle and real estate, which actually I think Kathy, between the two of them, she billed out maybe about $190,000 more than we had anticipated. And those actually have really good collection rates. We collect almost all of the supplementals.
and just be clear, that's either cars leaving our grand list or coming onto our grand list, right? And usually older ones are leaving, newer ones are coming
Yep.
on. And then in terms of the real estate, is that renovations and other things where the value of the
Yeah,
project gets added
for
to
things
the-
that have occurred after October 1st, setting of the grand list, yep.
Okay, and then there's the personal property, right?
Personal property, we don't do a supplemental. That's just as of the October grand list.
Okay.
What is other revenues? What's in that?
Oh, park and rec fees, that's probably one of the biggest components. Now that you asked me,
Net
I'm
fees?
drawing a blank. What?
Net fees? Like park and rec program fees? or-
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yep, program fees, beach permits, solid waste, dump stickers,
But I guess,
those kinds of
are
things.
those coming into the special revenue fund, or is this just the revenue that comes into the general fund?
This is just what's into the general fund, and from the Park and Rec Special
Okay.
Revenue Fund, which is the bulk of their
Programming?
programming, that comes in at the end of the year through a transfer in, just the net between revenues and expenses in that fund.
And do we track on, do we have the special revenue fund?
Yeah, you do, it's in with the other funds.
But we don't track that versus year-to-date, do we, or?
If you look on page 8,
Okay,
12 of the slides.
Yeah, it's,
So Jenny, it's really non-programming
Gotcha,
fees?
Yeah, for Park and Rec.
right.
Okay.
But yeah, the other big ones, solid waste, dump permits,
Figure all that stuff.
planning and zoning fees.
And Jen, can you, I apologize if you've done this already, talk about the building permits number being so low?
That's pretty typical for this time of year. They budgeted $500,000 in permit fees for the redevelopment projects. Through the end of November, they had only taken in 24,000, but if I recall from a deposit I just did last week, I think they had about a $100,000 permit come through in December. So those are gonna be a little bit
Choppy.
lumpy. So part of that is, part of their total budget of 2 million is the 500,000, and then it's about 1.5 million of normal building permit activity, but they do tend to be lower in the fall.
So we're not worried about it?
No.
Okay. Thanks.
Nothing really of interest on the expenditure side. Everything is going as expected. We do have some vacancies still in the police department in communications as well as in patrol.
Do we know what our full-time number of police people is at this point, officers? We back up to 51, or are we under? Back
We
under
are
50?
under. We just had somebody start today, and I want to say that we have 2 other vacancies that we're recruiting for, as well as the new one that I think it will be 3 as of January 1st, because we funded half a year for a new one.
Yeah, it feels like we get to the full number, and then very shortly after that, it goes back down under.
Yep.
Thank you.
Well, it's either it gets down or they're at the police academy in training. So it's hasn't been that often where there's actually a full 53 on the street, if you will.
On page 4 of the report, the state revenues, I just want to call your attention to kind of the middle section of the general fund up at the top. MRSA sales tax sharing, we had gotten 100-something thousand 2 years ago, like around 200,000 last year, and we budgeted 75 this year. We will not be receiving anything this year. That is a formula based on sales tax collections that this is like 3rd or 4th in line on what gets distributions from that fund, so they're not distributing anything for the sales tax sharing. And so my recommendation is in the budget. I think we took a chance this year because we had 2 years unexpected that showed a lot, but I don't think we really want to put anything in the budget for that next year. It's just too much of an unknown. And I was at a meeting last week, and the undersecretary of OPM, he was pointing out that projections right now show that the state is about $75 to $85 million short of what they need to meet the intergovernmental obligations. And he was saying, not sounding the alarm that anything's going to be cut, but that's something that the legislature will have to address in their upcoming session. So I think we need to be pretty conservative on state revenues in the budget.
And
Does
Jen
that
or
cover
Paul?
special ed as well?
I don't think so. I think it might just be for the formula grants, but I'm not certain.
Okay.
And Paul, is there any, do you know of any update on the special ed reimbursement rate, where those submissions are coming in?
Don't know. Submissions had to be in December 1st. The first payment will be made in February. That'll, as indicated, it'll be about 75% of what we expect for the year, but it all depends upon how many claims are filed and how severe are those claims. Because last year they increased the funding to 181 million, but they got 263 million in claims. It just blew away. And we had budgeted between 70 and 75%, and we got a net 67%.
Contingency accounts are all in good shape for this time of year. As I said, the salary contingency, we have 51,000, and we just have the 9 dispatch positions that are still unsettled for their current year increases. On the other funds, things are going well. I do want to call your attention to page 9, the Great Island Management Fund. So we currently have only 2 properties rented. The expended, so the collections through November were 78,000. We're taking in just over 10,000 a month in rent right now. And we had kind of a catch-up payment in December, so now our expenditures in this fund as of right now are about $90,000. We budgeted a $225,000 transfer from the general fund with the idea of we would only use what we need to make the fund whole, or we also have 176,000 of fund balance to draw from. So I don't think we'll need the full 225 from the general fund, but with only 2 properties rented, those expenditures are definitely gonna be more than what we bring in.
Jen, given that those properties that the leases are set to terminate either July 1st or July 31st, what are the rules around the actual use of a special revenue fund? Does it need to be a fund where you believe that your revenues will generally offset your expenses?
No, it can be a special revenue fund even if the primary source is the general fund. And that would just allow you to segregate any revenues or expenditures for that purpose. But when it came to financial reporting, it'll be rolled up with the general fund and be considered part of the general fund. But on our books and the way we operate it, we can still operate it as a special revenue fund if we want to keep it separate for tracking purposes.
And given that revenue will be going to zero or near zero, depending on any more movies being filmed there, my view has been for a while that I don't necessarily see a reason why we're supposed to be making transfers into a special revenue fund that's going to receive virtually zero revenue.
I think there was a desire by many people to see what is it costing us to manage and run Great Island. And so this was the best way of separating that out. Regardless of what the source of funding is, this was a way to track what does it cost us to maintain that property.
Yeah. But I think even with that, I would just say that if we're going to do that, if that really was the purpose, then we'd start tracking, like 10% of Ed's time, 20% of Tony's time and all of that, and truly like allocate the expenses if we want to do it. Right now, effectively, it's third-party service providers that we're tracking here. So I don't, I'd like to rethink that around budget time.
So I think, and I've been back and forth as we're working on the budget, I think that what we should do is continue to present it as a separate fund. And then if the decision is to roll it into the general fund rather than having a transfer from the general fund to do that, we can do that in the middle of the budget process. But I think for starting the budget process, we leave it as is and then let those discussions occur.
Because that special revenue fund, is that being used for sort of capital items and expense items? Like small capital items?
Small
like
capital
repair,
items. Most
like
of it
paving and so forth was done out of that fund, right?
Paving of the driveways, not
Yeah.
of the main roadways, that's being done through the acquisition fund. Repairs to the mechanicals or roofs, minor capital items on the structures, those kinds of things.
Got it.
You raised a point I was going to ask. Are we tracking how much staff time from Public Works versus Parks and Rec that are going to like leaf blowing and clean and maintenance? Or do we track which department is actually handling that maintenance?
So it's mostly, I don't know if Park and Rec has anybody that's doing work out there. It is primarily, if not 100%, Public Works. We have a contract for like landscaping, groundskeeping services. So Park and Rec isn't doing that. That's just a set monthly fee.
I thought they were doing leaf pickup, but.
That I'm not sure, but I do know that we have that
Okay.
landscape groundkeeping contract. So it's mostly the DPW building maintenance crew
Right.
that's out there doing stuff.
Okay.
Active bonded projects, nothing really of interest here. I did add in the increase to Gorham's Pond, even though technically it's not effective until Thursday, but it was approved by the RTM on the 9th. We are going to be, we're going to need to do a bond and or note issue in April because we have notes that are maturing. So I have reached out to our financial advisor. We're going to get the process started on that. I did ask that we build a bit more slack into our schedule than we normally do, just because I'll be doing that as well as town administrator duties. Because I'm assuming we won't have somebody on board to really get the bonding process started. So we'll be starting on that. We'll have to have a discussion about some sizing, and the main one that I think I want you guys to think about, we don't need to discuss it right now, but we'll have it on an upcoming agenda, is what do we want to do about the 49 million that we have in bands for Great Island acquisition? We can roll it another year as bands, because we don't quite know what's going on, or we can issue it as bonds, and then depending on what comes out of GIAC and the master plan, we run a slight risk of maybe them having to be redone as taxable bonds. But it's just something to think about if we want to keep those as bands and do more HHR as bonds, or if we want to permanently finance the 49 million and do HHR as bands this year. But just something to think about.
Well, HHR, we're gonna do over 20 years, right?
Yes,
And we have the option to do up to 30 years on
on a school project, yeah.
the island.
On the island, yeah.
Land
And the
acquisition.
first issue that we did on Great Island, we did for 30 years. But I think that's going to be one of our biggest decisions to make for this upcoming issue.
Just for presentation purposes on the bonds, do you guys list call dates on when the bonds, any of these bond issues can be refinanced? I know we're not in an interest rate environment that permits that right now, but in terms of.
So
keeping-
Munistat is always looking to see if we have anything
Okay.
that would be, that would satisfy kind of the criteria for refunding.
Okay,
And at the moment, no, nothing.
Yeah. one can hope. Right.
Someday it'll
Someday.
be there.
We'll catch up to the yield curve.
Yeah, Jenny, I'll send you around, I have a list of like every bond, every call date, everything that we have. I'll send it around to everybody. And Jen, on the bonding, I saw, just looking at what's been obligated versus what's still available in terms of,
On ARPA?
no, on HHR.
Oh, gotcha.
Is it, we've only actually encumbered 17 million? And I think, what's the total amount that we raised for that so far?
Well, we've issued about 10 million per school.
Okay. So we're about 50 to 60% of it obligated of what we've issued so far, right?
Less.
When you say obligated, and
Well, I'm just looking at like, when do we actually, will they start drawing down on the general fund, or will they still have kind of bond proceeds remaining?
they're going at a pretty good clip. So we have actually 2 rounds of payments that total close to $2 million each. So about 4 million going out the door in the next couple of weeks on HHR. So they're going to run through what we've borrowed for them pretty close to when we reissue.
So is there an idea, when we go to market in April, just thinking about the quantum, do we think we're going to effectively have to bond for the balance?
We're thinking of it as a 3-part. So we've done our first, 10 million per school. I think on our plan, which plans are subject to change, and we'll have to get an updated cash flow from them to see what makes sense to borrow in the spring. But I think our plan was about another 40 million-ish for HHR in April. And then the balance as either notes or bonds, depending on what we're doing with Great Island, in the final year. As of yet, we have not gotten back any state reimbursement, so that's another thing that'll factor in with how much we issue.
So when is it expected that HHR is completely done, if you will, like punch list time? Is that summer of this, will it be ready in September of '25?
I don't believe so.
No,
I think we're looking at early '26.
I don't think so.
I don't know.
Okay. If you can maybe find out what the final date is, just because if it's,
Yep.
because if it's you know, if it's
You're
less
trying-
than a
you're trying-
year from
You're
when we
trying to
issue the
time,
bonds.
you're trying to payments out, bond receipts.
Right, so
bond-
we're not
bond
dipping
proceeds,
into
yeah.
the general fund and we're not
Yeah.
hanging on to
Yeah, I
the
think-
proceeds.
I think it's a good point that you bring up. I think it's probably a conversation to have with contractors, right? There's gonna be, it's gonna accelerate through at some point,
Right.
and the question is, how do you fund that? We don't, my particular belief is we shouldn't wanna do it out of the general fund. Like, we wanna have proceeds there. to
We have
pay
a bunch
for
of
this.
other things, like I'm saying, if you look at the sewer projects and some other things that could tax that, maybe, and Jen, if you want to work with me on that, in Jen on the bonding side, but I guess what I'd like to think about is, right now, short-term taxable rates, if you look where they are generally north of longer-term muni rates. So from right now, if we were to kind of go out and bond and lock up those investments, we could, you know, it doesn't necessarily cost us by doing a larger amount today, provided we just invest the proceeds
Yeah, and
accordingly.
I think a key to that is what is the cash flow on the HHR project over the next 18 months from now?
Yeah, it's a great question. So we have an HHR committee meeting tomorrow night. I'll raise that question for the group, to the group, and especially to Scott and that
Yeah,
team.
And I'll shoot out an email to Scott and the ONG crew and
Yeah, put me
ask
on
them
it,
to
obviously.
update.
Yeah, and let's see what they come back with, because clearly there's a timeline here, right? And they're doing well. I don't know if you got, who was on the school tour,
Yeah.
but it's coming along really nice, but there's gonna be a crunch time. Like, you can see they want to step on the gas. We just want to be ready with cash.
Okay, so
payments.
we'll look at this, the future
Yeah.
drawdowns, then we'll maybe have Mark run a couple bond
Yep.
scenarios, and then let's have him run that against, you know, maybe matching the construction drawdown budget with where you could invest short-term, right? Like, kind of ladder it out like we do the rest of the funds. And we may be able to earn positive arbitrage there, which we're permitted to do, so.
And Jen brings up the good point too, is the state reimbursements haven't kicked in, right?
Right.
Like, that'll be a
Yeah.
Q1 event, Jim, so where does that fit in that whole, yeah, it's a total cash flow
Yep.
We also,
timeline that has to be drawn out for
if
us
we
to
wait
do
on a
this.
chunk too, I mean, the rates, the absolute rates for the next, whatever, 20 years might be lower if we wait for a chunk at the end of the year.
That's true too.
One more time? Taylor, I don't know if I,
I mean, with rates dropping, like
Yeah.
if you save a chunk for the end of next year, like you might get a better rate for the 20-year term that might well offset the difference.
Well, I
Yeah.
think the curve's finally steepening, and it's really like the short-term rates are coming down. I think
finally.
we'll know more
Yeah.
tomorrow, but.
Anyway, I'm sure we'll,
I think,
Figure it
I
out.
think we have our marching order on what we're trying to do. And then we'll come back to this team and we'll figure out
Yeah,
what's
so
definitely.
I think HHR and Great Island are gonna be our big
Mhm.
things to decide.
Yep.
And from a timing perspective, the earliest we can go is once the audits come,
Oh, no, the audit's complete.
so we're ready to go, right? Like, we can go as early as now, right?
If we could do it, if we, singular, could do all the work, yeah.
If the fans start
Point
doing all the
got
work.
nothing else going on. Jeff.
Where's that
that
gavel?
out.
Where's that gavel again?
All right, we're shooting for less than 8:30 here. Let's
Okay.
keep going.
The only other thing that I wanted to call your attention to on the financial report is beginning on page 17, ARPA.
Yeah, I was just gonna, yeah.
So we have had a couple meetings over the last couple weeks with those departments that have active projects. We are in really good shape. What you see is unobligated, it totals 129,000, but the bulk of that is we haven't increased the PO on the sewer I&I, which is our catch-all account. We'll do that just before December 31st when we've cleaned up all the other balances and we know if anything has to come in or out and we have a final number for sewer I&I. So that's about 101,000 of the unobligated. What we have the departments working on is, after our check run tomorrow, they're gonna get a list of all the open POs and they have to provide to me documentation showing that there was a contract in order, something that obligated those funds prior to December 31st. So we'll have that packet all ready to go for when the auditors are here in the summer. There's a few things that they think are gonna get paid even before December 31st, so I think we're in really good shape.
And the sewer side, I know there was an issue a few weeks ago, like, can it be used to reimburse things like that as well?
I mean, like on the sewer break?
Yeah.
No, that would just be done by the
Sewer
sewer fund. But that's all that I have on the financial report.
It's a nice job, Jen, on
Thank you.
getting that
Thank you, Jen.
unobligated down. I mean, that worst comes to worst, if the 101 comes out of the 129, we only got 28 out of 6
Yeah,
million to start, or whatever, at 6.5.
and everybody
work.
knows the marching orders of we're not giving back a penny. And
I'm assuming that's on both the finance director and the town administrator's to-do list for December 31st.
Yes,
Awesome, so we have a double check.
except that I got in trouble in the audit for submitting and not getting Kate's second approval on something, so, on ARPA.
Gotta be able to.
The only other thing, I will point out one other thing, the bottom of page 21, the last page of the ARPA, I'm listing for you what I've done as administrative transfers on ARPA, and we're gonna have a lot more of these, just little back and forth, but they're all within the active projects that you've already.
It's the only time we're saying, spend the money, right?
Faster.
It's not our-
Faster.
It's not our money.
Spend it faster.
It's not our taxpayers, no. Not just.
And when we get to the minutes, I have a couple of corrections that'll be made.
Okay, so next, the minutes. So I think attendance.
Yes, attendance is what we need to
Yeah, I was
clean
just
up.
gonna say.
So Rob and Taylor were not present. Jenny was
was.
present and actually made some motions, and so we'll put Jenny in as present and we'll put Rob and Taylor as absent.
Sorry. I didn't approve that one, did I? I feel bad, don't remember
You
seeing it.
didn't attend.
No, I know, but
By the
that's
way,
why I
you're the
thought they were
secretary
present.
again, according to the notes.
What?
I didn't.
Yeah.
You and Rob weren't here, Dan was secretary, so a lot of
No,
these
but usually,
mistakes.
did I just miss the email, Jen?
I think
I'm
you
so
gave
sorry.
me.
I just did.
I thumbed up.
Yeah.
Because I read it, that's the weird thing. If I
You know why?
did, it's because I read it.
Because I know me,
Anyway.
I kind of gloss over the attendance stuff.
I don't actually, so that's weird. But anyway,
Well,
I
you put
apologize
yourself
if I
here,
did
so-
The
that.
important thing here, you see that we
No,
voted
I
you
know,
in
I
as
wasn't
treasurer.
there.
Oh, sorry, that's
Yeah,
secretary.
You're-
It
Congratulations.
was unanimous.
Yeah.
Yes.
Super duper.
You're not here.
So beyond correcting the attendance to remove Robin, Taylor and Ed, Jenny. Any other comments? Okay. Hearing none, I'll accept the motion to approve as amended. Dan moves, Jenny seconds. All those in favor? Unanimous. Special assignments, committee reports. Rob?
I'll go first. So the easy one probably, we'll go to dispatchers. It's still going, negotiations. I guess the union canceled on us last time. We're trying to get a new date. I don't
Yeah.
know, Jen, if you have a new date, but I haven't heard one.
We don't yet.
So hopefully we can close this out next meeting maybe, or
Hopefully.
next two. Feels like we've been doing it forever. So that's the update there. On the audit, I saw somebody gave me a report at 5:30 today.
Yes.
Nice job. So it sounds like we're done.
We're done,
So-
it's filed, we're good to go.
So we'll do a review. We'll have a review call with the
Yep.
partner and everybody else. So do you want me to reach out to them? Do you want to reach out and put us together and we'll pick a date to do a review?
If you guys let me know your availability, some dates in January, I'll reach out to
Yeah.
them. And
I'll work around your schedule.
I can't remember if I told you, but Nicoletta, who was our partner,
Yeah.
had left the firm, and we have Vanessa is our partner just to get through this year, and then
Okay.
we'll have somebody new next year.
And, sorry, John, I just saw a pop-up. So you circulated the audit report to everybody, right?
Just to the
Or just
committee
us
until
for
after
now?
you meet with the auditors for
And then we'll
the
give it
review,
to
and then it'll go
everybody?
to everybody.
So it sounds excellent, so thank you, nice work. HHR, I had sent an email maybe a week and a half ago. I also did a hard copy just in case you guys hadn't seen. So there's some, because the kind of original intent was to have Chris Price and Jill show up and give us an update, but I thought this was really thorough. So I kind of said, enjoy the night for those guys. But just kind of high level, $17.1 million spent out of the 101. as it says here, I'm just kind of almost no contingency from both sides has been used so far. And then in Q1 of '25, we'll start asking for state reimbursement. But it's coming along nice. Like I said, if I go back to the buildings tour of the schools, if you guys saw it, it's pretty dramatic to see these schools kind of, in some parts, I'll use the word kind of blown out a little bit and expanded. But it's gonna look great when it's done. And you can see and also the principals, kind of all three schools are really excited. The kids are excited about what's coming, so looking forward to it. So, but it's moving along kind of at a nice pace, and from a dollars perspective, just right on cue. And just to kind of recap what we've said before, Jen and I will talk to the committee tomorrow and see if we can get that cash flow going, because it's going to be key for us as kind of as a committee, and how we're going to raise bonds for it. Questions or anything on that? On any three of those?
Excuse me.
That's it for me.
You've got Dan set a high bar coming in early and under budget, so.
Gosh, it's gonna. I see Dan kind of sitting there. It's like, Cardone, you got a nice bar to meet. But yeah, appreciate that. I'm excited about the team that we're working with. I mean, there's really good group. So, and you really can't give enough kudos to Jill and Chris driving this thing.
Yes. Okay. Pension fund?
No meeting.
Okay. I'll give a quick update on GIAC. We actually have a meeting tomorrow night where the results of the second survey will be presented. I think it's fairly extensive, and the report should be posted tonight if it's not already posted. But we're now beginning to develop what we believe should be, if you will, the scaffolding of what the vision plan should look like. So that's what will happen over the next month or two. And once that vision plan is done, the idea is we'll then move on to phase 2, which is taking that vision plan and trying to turn it into a master plan where we map out what are the things that could be done, what will they cost, and how would they be implemented in the future. Otherwise, I think the feedback from the community has been good. As you know, it's now been about a month where the community can go out there and enjoy the entire island, absent going inside most of the structures, and folks are allowed to bring their pets out there and walk as well. So,
Sorry if I missed this, Jen. How many responses did you guys get? Do you have any
the
idea?
first survey was about 3,000, and the second one I think was close to 2,000.
Oh, it's great.
And the second one took place after a second sort of full day community engagement, half of which was here at Town Hall, the other half was at out on Great Island. So I think the feedback has been good. I will say, I think what I've heard, just with my financial hat on, people are really enjoying getting out and making use of the island, and realizing that there's a lot to see and do and walk out there, even before we've really done anything other than effectively pave one road. And as it relates to the 23A, the entrance coming in, there have been a few motions filed and so forth in State Superior Court, given the the one appeal that was launched, and things are moving forward, but slowly. So any kind of future work on the island, if you begin to think about parking or stuff like that, that 23A needs to first be widened before anything else, before it makes sense to do anything else.
One thing I've heard is that seniors have a tough time accessing it because they need to be dropped off versus walking from Pear Tree or from Henley, or not Henley,
Yeah.
you know what I'm saying, all the way up Ringsend Road. So it's a difficult to access unless for seniors because of the length of the walk to get to it.
And I would say in terms
Some
of
seniors.
Yeah, in terms of priority, there's been a lot of thought given to whether or not there can be sort of senior or handicap parking that's made available sooner rather than later. I think we'll see how things move forward with the appeal on 23A. But I think that's a skinny road to get 2 cars by. But we're trying to figure out ways that we can help some of those people get on. Chairman's report, nothing new. I mentioned on January 2nd and then January 4th, the two big Board of Ed initial budget meetings. Any new business? Agenda review?
I'll formally congratulate.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, so I was gonna say, let's not let, this may be Jen's, her last meeting as our finance director, it may be her shortest meeting here, but I want to congratulate Jen. The Board of Selectmen last night announced that Jen would be taking over the role as town administrator, and I will say it's bittersweet. I think Jen's will be awesome in the job. I think our town is lucky to have her, where she is today and where she'll be starting tomorrow, or I'm not sure if you started today already. But it's
Both chairs.
it's amazing that to have someone with your caliber kind of move into that position, and particularly somebody with your knowledge of all the financial side of things move in. I thought it always sort of was very valuable when Kate kind of moved in, having that background. So, congratulations. Well deserved.
Now find us a really good replacement.
Trying.
Yes.
I know it's gonna be big shoes.
Yeah. Well, you actually can't stop doing this job until you find someone.
She's motivated to
But-
find a
Oh, yeah.
replacement in multiple ways.
But Jen, like, I know there are kind of two jobs on your plate, so if there are things that you need help from anyone on this committee
Yeah.
to do, don't, in the near term, don't be
You
afraid
want
to
to cover
lean in.
payroll?
Financially, or just press the button?
No, you don't.
We're getting close to my old age.
Yeah.
So, with that, I will entertain a motion to adjourn. Rob moves, Jenny seconds. All those in favor?
Great. Shortest meeting.